All right, so we're diving deep today into that whole Burna Boy thing at the Lagos countdown.
Oh, yeah, the one where the fan got on stage.
Yeah, that's the one. Um, so we're going to go past just the headlines with this. We've got some different sources to look at.
And Burna Bird himself even weighed in, right?
Yeah, he had some things to say. So I think we're going to see a lot of different angles on this one, kind of get a bigger picture of what went down.
Yeah, I mean, this kind of stuff, it's tricky, right? Like, artist safety
Yeah.
and how wild they can get.
Yeah, that whole dynamic at live shows. So, okay, picture it. It's New Year's Day, huge concert in Lagos. We got WizKid there, CV Abez. Vibe is electric.
Yeah, big names, huge energy.
Exactly. But then this whole thing with Burna Boy happens.
Yeah.
And that's all anyone's talking about.
Yeah, eclipses everything else.
It's what, right? Like, even the first source we're looking at here, it says Burna Boy walks off stage after altercation with fan. But they mention right away, like, mixed reactions online.
Oh, so already there's people taking sides.
Totally. It's not cut and dry, you know? Makes you think there's more to it.
Definitely. And honestly, just try putting yourself in that spot, right? You're performing, all those eyes on you, and suddenly someone blows past security, comes rushing at you.
Yeah, that'd be terrifying.
Yeah, talk about feeling vulnerable. Like, who knows what could happen? That's got to be a lot to process, like right there on the spot.
No kidding. And there's this other thing, too. The article mentions Burna Boy had just dealt with some online drama. Like, he was calling someone out for spreading stuff about his properties. False claims, he said.
So maybe he was already on edge going into the performance.
Totally possible, right? Like, we don't know what was in his head, but you got to factor that in.
Yeah, because they are human, right? Artists, they have lives and stuff happening off stage, too. It's not just the performance.
Absolutely. Okay, so this next source. Burna Boy says mental problem made him attack fan who stormed stage at Lagos concert. Whoa. Different tone already.
Attack, that's strong language.
Yeah. And then it gets into this whole thing about Burna Boy claiming he has PTSD, like that it played a part in what happened.
That definitely adds a whole other layer to it.
Right. Now, obviously, we're not doctors here. We can't diagnose anybody.
Right, right. But it does make you think about the expectations we have of artists and what they might be dealing with that we don't see.
Totally. And it's interesting, too, because the same article mentions some fans were defending Burna Boy, saying maybe he felt genuinely threatened.
You've got people kind of picking sides already.
Yeah, and different interpretations of what went down.
Which makes sense. I mean, everyone brings their own viewpoint, their experiences, how they see the world. Especially with something this emotional, people react differently.
True, true. And then there's this quote from Burna Boy. The article includes it. He says, "Everybody knows my rule about getting on stage and startling me when I'm performing."
Oh, interesting. So maybe there were boundaries he'd set before.
Right. Like, maybe this wasn't the first time something like this has happened.
Yeah, could be a pattern. Changes things a bit, doesn't it? Like, if he'd made that clear beforehand, did the fan ignore it?
And, like, were we even aware of this rule as the audience? You know what I mean? Okay, before we wrap up this part of the deep dive, one more source to go through. It's called "Don't Startle Me While Performing, Burna Boy Breaks Silence on Stage Altercation."
Keeping that startle thing going?
Yep. This one has some curious details, though. Like, it says Burna Boy was seen kicking the fan, not that he actually for sure did it.
Okay, subtle but important.
Right.
Like, eyewitness stuff, it can be unreliable. And you got to be careful about jumping to conclusions, especially with, like, social media clips. You only see a snippet.
Exactly. And this is going to sound weird, but there's this other detail that stuck with me. The source mentions Burna Boy actually played longer than he was scheduled to.
Huh. Trying to make up for the disruption, maybe.
Right. Or was it like a, hey, I'm still here for y'all kind of thing?
Could be. Trying to regain control of the narrative, showing his fans he's committed despite what went down. Funny how something that small can raise so many questions, huh? Like, what was his intention there? We don't know for sure.
It's tricky.
It's a lot to think about, right? Performing in front of all those people. And then, on top of that, maybe dealing with something like PTSD.
It really makes you realize we only see, like, the tip of the iceberg with these artists, like what they're going through personally.
Totally. And if Burna Boy really does have PTSD, which, again, we can't know for sure, but if he does, it changes how you view the whole thing.
Like how someone with that kind of trauma, how they might react.
Exactly. And I don't know, it makes you think about, like, how differently we might react if we knew more about what artists were going through. Would we expect them to act differently? Should we?
That's a tough one. It's like, do we give them a pass? Or, I mean, it's not that simple, is it?
No, not at all. It's more about, I think, understanding Empathy, like recognizing that mental health is a real thing.
And it can affect people in ways we might not even realize.
Absolutely. And especially now with social media and everything, like everyone's so quick to judge.
Oh, yeah. People jumping to conclusions based on, like, a 10-second clip without knowing the whole story.
Right. And that can have a real impact on someone, not just their reputation, but their mental health, their career.
So are we saying artists should get a free pass if they're struggling with something? Because that doesn't seem fair either.
No, not a free pass. It's not about that. But recognizing that, look, their behavior might be influenced by something we don't know about.
Yeah, yeah. Like something that might seem totally normal to one person could be like a trigger for someone else.
Exactly. So I think it's about like trying to understand and not assuming we know everything.
It makes you wonder, right? Are we holding artists to some impossible standard?
I think so sometimes. They're supposed to be perfect, perform flawlessly, handle every situation with grace.
And all while they're dealing with like the pressure of fame and all that comes with it,
Mm.
it's got to be a lot.
Oh, huge pressure. And like you said, social media just amplifies everything. Every little mistake, I don't know, every little thing gets blown out of proportion.
Okay, so then where's the line?
Mm.
Like, how do we hold them accountable for their actions, but also recognize that they're human, that they might be struggling?
That's the question, isn't it? It's not easy. But I think it starts with recognizing that there's almost always more to the story than we know.
It's like that saying, right? Be kind. Everyone's fighting a battle you know nothing about.
Exactly. And maybe with artists, it's even more important to remember that because the pressure they're under, it's huge.
So yeah, maybe we need to be a little slower to judge
Hmm.
and a little quicker to listen, to try to
A
understand,
little more empathy goes a long way.
especially when it's hard.
Yeah, especially then.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Like, we could talk about this all day. There's so much to unpack.
Oh, for sure. This whole thing with Burna Boy, it kind of brings up this bigger issue that's happening a lot lately.
Yeah, and more artists are talking about it too, right? Like the mental health stuff,
Hmm.
the pressure, the need for boundaries, even.
It's good, though, I think, that they're being more open about it. Like, it makes it okay to talk about these things.
But then it's like, okay, so what do we do with that information? As fans, as, as a society,
Hmm.
are we listening? Are we supporting them? Or are we just making things worse?
That's the thing, right? It's tricky. Like, we want to respect them, be understanding, but they also got to be held accountable when their actions, when they affect other people.
Yeah. Because even if we get it, the pressure and all that,
Mhm.
doesn't mean they can just do whatever they want.
Exactly. It's got to be a balance. And that's, I think, what we need to keep talking about. How do we make it so artists feel safe to be open
Mm.
about their struggles without being judged or punished or whatever? But also, how do we make sure they're responsible for their actions when those actions, go too far?
It's tough. It really is.
That's a lot to think about. And I think this whole deep dive, it's given us plenty to consider.
Oh, yeah. The incident itself. Everyone's different takes on it.
Yeah.
And then those big questions it brings up. Artist safety, how fans act, and how mental health plays into all of it,
Yeah.
especially when you're talking about someone in the public eye like Burna Boy.
And I hope it's, I don't know, maybe made us all a little more aware of how we take in information, the judgments we make, and what we expect from these artists.
It's been, I don't know, really eye-opening for me. So thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the whole Burna Boy thing, all the different sides of it.
Always a pleasure to like really get into these complicated topics. And there's always so many sides to a story.
Right. Like so much we don't see.
And that's the point of a deep dive, isn't it? To make you curious, make you think, and realize there's always more to learn.
So yeah, until next time, keep asking those questions. Keep learning.
Yeah.
And keep on diving deep with us.